I think it's time we had a chat about gear. Not like Tony Northrup kind of chat, and definitely not Jared Polin kind of chat, but gear that really makes a difference in your photography. I want to know, what is that one piece of gear that you just can't live without, and why? What does it do for you? Stay tuned. Hey gang, happy Wednesday. I am Joe Edelman and welcome to another episode of The Last Frame Live. Thanks so much for joining me. You guys know the drill. If you're here live, please check in the chat, leave your name, let me know where you're from. And if you're watching it recorded, in the bottom, down below, comments, leave your name, let me know where you're tuning in from. All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers that tune into The Last Frame from over 100 different countries around the world. How cool is that? Seriously. So of course, make sure that you are keeping up to date with the TalkTap Photography Podcast. For those of you that are interested in shooting maternity, newborns, don't miss this week's episode. It's going to come out late Friday, maybe Saturday morning. I'm not going to lie. I originally planned to air it a couple of weeks from now, but this interview was just too good. It's my good buddy, Tracie Maglosky, who is an Olympus visionary, a pro photo legend of light. And for the last couple of years, her business has been migrating to predominantly newborns and maternity. And folks, I'm really serious. Tracie gave me a masterclass for free on shooting maternity and newborns and the business side of it. And I will tell you guys right now, on the business side, she gave lessons that apply to just about any kind of people photography, portraits, weddings, you name it. So you don't want to miss it. But let's dive right in. You're here for the gear talk. I expect that we'll probably have a few extra people tuning in tonight because of gear. And it's not going to be your normal gear thing. Like, it goes without saying. Your most important gear is kind of your camera, right? That's probably top of most people's list, but we know that. And I don't want to talk about cameras. I'm certainly not going to debate about what brand or whose camera is better. You've made your decisions, and that's awesome. If you're happy with your camera, life is good. What I want to do is I want to help each other, the community. What are the pieces of gear that made the biggest difference for you in your photography? You know, that you never leave home without it. And it might be something simple, right? It could be a little tiny gadget. It could be an accessory that gets added to something. Maybe it's a specific type of light. I don't care. But here's what I want to know. I want to know, what is that piece of gear and why? So if it's a tripod, tell me what kind of tripod. Tell me the model number. Tell me if it's got a special head on it. If it's a piece of lighting gear, that's cool. Lighting's important. But what piece of gear and why? So if you're here live, goes in the chat. If you're watching this recorded, I want to keep the conversation going, so add it to the comments below. Now, as I often do, I posted this question in my Facebook group earlier today because I knew that I would be able to get a lot of people to weigh in and kind of get the conversation going. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with some of the things that were posted in the Facebook group, and I will share the page with you guys here. In fact, actually, let me share the link to my Facebook group. That would probably be the best thing. Now, if you are not already a member of the group, you should join. I will tell you, unfortunately, that since I'm talking to you right now, I'm not going to be approving new members while we're chatting. But as soon as we get done, I will gladly make sure that you have admission to the group. Just be sure to answer the 3 questions that come up when you apply to be in the group. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and switch my screen over here. And the question was, what is the one piece of gear that you can't live without? Cameras don't count. It could be a lens. It could be a gadget, maybe a light accessory. Tell me what it is and why. Okay. So I'm just going to go through here and a couple things that I want to do. I'm going to give you some of kind of my input and maybe expand on some of these answers. And at the same time, it's not about who's got a better idea or anything like that, but if it triggers something that maybe that I use or a utility that I have, I'll gladly share that with you. And if I think there's benefit to it, I will make it a point to go ahead and pull up the website from that company, etc. So Randy Poe mentioned tethering gear right out of the box. Yes, indeed. I like to tether. I use all the Tether Tools gear. Obviously, I'm sponsored by Tether Tools. You know that. He works with dancers, and while he drives concepts and the poses to go with them, he finds that the dancers are pickier on trying various poses than he could ever be. And you know, gang, that's a great lesson to learn. If you ever have the opportunity to work with dancers, especially ballerinas, you better be on your A game, period. They go through brutal and intense training to learn their craft. And part of learning their craft is a certain elegance. Everything that they do has a right way and a wrong way to do it for a ballerina. So they want it right. So as much as you know that I frequently talk about not being a fan of showing images while I'm shooting because it really interrupts the flow, working with the dancer is one of the exceptions for me. I will almost always show dancers images because if I am thinking, well, that line doesn't look right, or I wish we could change this, they're able to look at that image and they're going to make that change and nail it on the next shot. So that's very, very important. For Joseph Rosselli, the Joe Edelman DIY background stand that's made from PVC pipe. Love it. Use it all the time. That's great, Joe. Really glad to hear that. I actually still have mine, and I do take it out with me frequently when I'm doing camera club talks. So I didn't just kind of create that for YouTube. It does still get used. Obviously, when I'm flying, I can't really take it. But locally, yes, it goes out on the road with me quite a bit. Richard, I could live without it, but I wouldn't want to. And that's cool. That's usually the case with, gear and gadgets. Black Rapid straps. I love having the camera slung on a hip or in the small of my back. And for the events I shoot, specifically motorsport and equestrian, I really like the quick draw to the eye. And so the Black Rapids are the sling straps, gang. I've tried them. I personally am not a fan of the Black Rapids, but believe me, I know tons of photographers that love the Black Rapids. Actually, I found two solutions that I like that are similar. One is actually made by a company called Barbershop. Now, it's a high-end, handcrafted leather strap. So full disclosure. And they were sold through Olympus with the Olympus logo on them, but it's got a really soft leather shoulder pad. I absolutely love it. And I kind of modify mine slightly. And what I do is I will work with two cameras. I will wear the sling strap and I will have a camera with a bigger lens, maybe a 40 to 150, a 300, or the 100 to 400 hanging on the sling. But then I use a peak design grip and I clamp that on the sling strap. And then I will take a second body with like a 7 to 14 or the little 12 to 45 and mount it literally right on my chest right here. So that gives me the ability, even with that camera mounted on my chest, I can still grab the camera at my side, bring it up and shoot, put it down. And then if I need the smaller camera, it's just pop the button, lift it up, and I'm good to go. So again, just options, but I know a lot of people love Black Rapid straps, and I will say slings in general. So those are the straps that run across body, and you have the camera on your side. They're awesome. Another thing that I did, and I apologize, I was not prepared with a link, but if any of you want it, just mention it in the chat and I'll make sure that I find the link towards the end of the show here. I found on Etsy, there are quite a few craftspeople who make leather sling straps and leather shoulder harnesses. So now there are several companies out there in the photography world. You can find them through B&H. You can find them in a lot of the normal photography outlets that make kind of the double shoulder harness that crisscrosses in the back and you can wear a camera on each side. So the challenge with those, and honestly, I apologize, I don't remember the specific brand names, but they're crazy expensive, ridiculously expensive. I found a bunch of companies on Etsy that make them. Now, what I also found when I went on Etsy and I looked for them is that a lot of the companies that make them, and when I say companies, these are craftsmen. These aren't like big corporations. They're like in Belarus or somewhere in, Eastern Europe. And I just wasn't too sure because part of what concerned me is that when you go and start looking through them, there's like 6 or 7 companies showing essentially the same different thing, and they're all in these unusual parts of the world. So I happened to stumble across a young couple, man and a woman, that live in Charlottesville, Virginia, here in the United States. And the husband makes them. The woman is actually a photographer. So she had this designed by him for her. And what I loved about it, and I couldn't find them anywhere else, it's a 2-shoulder harness that holds 2 cameras, but it's thin. So it's made out of leather, but the straps are only just under an inch wide. Most of the double harness straps that you find out there, they're really wide shoulder pads, really wide straps. So it's kind of bulky, right? And I wanted something that was thinner. I have the luxury, I work with smaller cameras. I'm an Olympus shooter, so my cameras aren't, super heavy, super bulky. And the fact of the matter is, gang, this harness that I'm talking about, I could use it with, a Nikon or a Canon or a Sony with a 4-pound lens on it. It would be absolutely fine. But I didn't want that bulk. So this strap was actually originally designed for the guy's wife. It was designed for a woman, a female shooter, but they not only, were offering them for sale, but they were also willing to customize them. So I actually have my Target and the frame logo stamped into it. And I had them add to the strap. It basically has a tripod screw that screws in either to your tripod socket, or if you have a lens collar on your lens, screws into that on the bottom. I paid them a couple extra bucks and had them sew on a tension strap that I could then clip on to the camera strap socket on the camera body, so that in the event I wasn't paying attention and the tripod socket loosened itself and came detached, I wasn't going to have a camera and a lens drop to the ground. There is basically a safety strap that if the tripod socket comes undone, it is still strapped and attached. So it's going to catch it, and I'm going to be able to, basically put it back together, and I'll be good to go. So if any of you are interested in that type of strap, just leave me a note, and I'll track it down at the end of the show, and I'll get you guys a link to their website. They were great to work with, and a ton cheaper than some of those high-end ones that we find at the major retailers and that. So, and gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the company. For some reason, the word Hot Shot is sticking in my head, and I'm probably getting it completely wrong. But I will say I've seen their straps up front. They are up in person. They are frequently at the trade shows, WPPI, Photo Plus. They're great quality, but they're just really pricey, period. So for me, I wanted something that kind of ticked off all the boxes without being quite that expensive. So from January, Williamson, she's come to love her harness, and indeed she uses it mostly with her bigger lenses. So the 70 to 200. And I will tell you, a lot of people on my Facebook group actually mentioned sling straps and harnesses. They're totally the way to go. It's only been for me the last probably 2 to 3 years that I've been using sling straps and harnesses, and absolutely love them. I really, really wish they would have been more available when I was younger, and that I would have, started using them much younger, because it would have been great. Okay. Comment here from, let's see, Mike Dorney. His pop-up Octobox softbox. This was a game changer for him. Putting a softbox together used to be a pain in the butt. Yeah, I'll go along with that. You had to put those little fiberglass rods into the mount, and that was a huge pain. Fortunately, we've gotten away from that, and most softboxes now are made with, collapsible rings. It's a whole lot easier. He says the pop-up ones are easy to travel with and even easier to set up. And I asked him like what brand and what size. He uses Glow, which is the Adorama brand, which I have used those. So it's a great. Hey, Ted, good to see you, man. And he said if he had to pick one, he would do the 36-inch, but he also owns a 28-inch and a 60-inch. And all good sizes. I mean, for me, my favorite collapsible softboxes, you've seen me talk about them in my videos. They are the Photix Rajas. So it's 2 T's, P-H-O-T-T-I-X. And I actually use the one that's about 25 inches, 25 inches around. I think it's 60 centimeters, if I'm not mistaken. And I love it. So my choice is a little bit smaller than Mike's. That doesn't make it better. It's just different. That's the one that I like. Okay. let me go back to the screen here so you guys can see what I'm reading. For Glenn McBay, the Olympus 40 to 150, it's his go-to lens for 80% of what he photographs. Yeah, and I mean, I love that lens. For me, I don't use it enough because I tend to either be, in the studio where I don't need a lens that long, or like for the last couple months, I've been shooting Little League baseball with my grandson like 2 or 3 times a week. And I was just having a blast with that 100 to 400, right? So, but yes, 40 to 150 for you full frame shooters, that's the equivalent of an 80 to 300. So it's kind of like having a 70 to 200 with a little bit more range, which is nice. You get that little extra bounce. And so that's a full frame equivalent, by the way, of a 300 millimeter lens at f2.8. Pretty cool, right? At a fraction of the cost, by the way, compared to buying a full frame 300 f2.8. So from Jason, also, he's a 70 to 200 2.8 guy. His reasoning, it's just so versatile. He uses it for portraits, events, weddings, landscapes, wildlife, sports, aircraft, and the list goes on. To him, it's probably the one lens that he couldn't live without. And he also likes using teleconverters and extension tubes. It gives him a very flexible solution for almost any situation. Let's see here for Steven, the equivalent of 85 millimeter prime, which is, he's a micro four thirds shooter. So that's a 42.5. Currently, he's using a Lumix G 42.5 f1.7, but he's going to be talking to KEH tomorrow. There you go, trading in some stuff to get that Leica Nocticron. Is that how that's said? Okay, but it's the 42.5 f1.2. Steven does a lot of street shooting, so having that little bit of extra speed. Normally, for me, like 1.7 to 1.2 is kind of like, why, right? But that's a perfect example of a situation where having that little extra bump can really make a big difference in your photography. And honestly, that would be the same if you were a full frame shooter or a micro four thirds shooter. If you're doing street photography, and especially if you do like to go out and shoot at night, because there's always really interesting light at night, especially in cities, then that little bit of extra is very helpful. And then he goes on to add a close second are the customizable function buttons and or quick menus. And Stephen, when I was putting my list together mentally today, I didn't really think about the custom buttons on cameras because it's part of the camera. But I will say for me, switching from the Nikon DSLRs to the Olympus system, those customizable buttons truly were a game changer. I absolutely love the ability to customize the camera and really truly make it my own. And we're talking about workflow, folks. So it's like making buttons do the things that you want them to do, right? So little tip though, for any of you that have not had the opportunity yet to start using customizable buttons and features like that on your cameras, if you're buying a new camera or if you just got your camera, don't customize it yet. Depending on how often you shoot. So that's really the key. I would recommend if you shoot frequently, at least once a week, wait at least 6 months before you customize the camera. Unless you've already got one and you're, going to basically move your settings over. But if this feature is new to you, don't take the camera out of the box and think that you know how you want to use it and then customize it. Full disclosure, I did that when I made the switch to Olympus. I was really excited about the fact that you could customize the camera. So I got my first EM1 Mark II, took it out of the box, and sat down for about an hour going through the manual and saying, okay, I want this button to do this and this button to do that. And then, because I hadn't actually learned my way around the camera yet, I couldn't get half the features on the camera to work because I had changed the buttons, and there's so many of them that are customizable. I didn't remember all the changes that I made. So the lesson I learned is get familiar with the camera, develop some habits and rituals and workflows with the camera, then customize them. And it will be an amazing feature for you if you do that. Okay. Let's see, from Jonas, his iFootage monopod. He has back issues and he does event photography. It takes the pressure off of him having to stand for long periods of time. It's also a great stabilizer for shots. It's pricey, but one of my best gear investments. Interestingly enough, Jonas, I have never heard of an iFootage monopod. So I'm curious now. Let me see if I can find one. So eye footage. Okay, so yeah, they are a little pricey. Whoops. They're not happy apparently here with Adorama. Let's try this one more time. See if it's gonna. It's not gonna let us have Adorama site here. We'll try it. Try the iFootage website. Okay, so okay, cool. So actually, looks like a pretty sweet monopod. It's got a foot. Nice and indeed pricey, but folded height 70.5 centimeters, extended height 180 centimeters. Pretty cool. Nice, very nice. Okay. So let me get back here to my questions. From Beth, a lens pen. I'm a simpleton. Actually, Beth, I got to be honest with you. It's surprising to me how many photographers don't carry lens pens or blower brushes. I know somebody else mentioned one of the Giotto blower brushes and lens cleaning material and even sensor cleaning material. So a few people did mention that. So don't consider yourself simple for that. Lens pens, they're important, okay? Let's see here. From Dahan, a spider holster. Absolutely love mine, and I use it even when I shouldn't, just out at the zoo with the family. But when shooting motocross all day, it's truly priceless. I have the plate on my long lenses, so one setup on each hip and a wide lens in his pouch on the back of the belt. So you use the whole belt system. Cool, okay. If he needs the wide angle, he can pull the camera off the long lens and leave it on the holster. With the other system or setups, and the mount on the body, there would be nowhere to put the long lens, right? You're kind of stuck tucking it under your arm while you're doing that. Conversely, I absolutely hate the same concept by Peak Designs. My clip from them is horrible. It hurts my body anywhere I mount it. It's hard to put the camera away without looking. I have tried to give it away to 3 people and no one has taken it yet. So yeah, I will say this. I'm going to do it backwards here. I'm a big fan of the Peak Design straps. It was the Peak Design straps that I was using for quite a while before I started going with the sling strap and the shoulder harnesses. I have indeed tried the belt clips from Peak Design, and I'm with you there, Dahan. I'm not really a fan of them. If I'm going to use a belt holster, it definitely would be the spider holster one. I'll be honest, the biggest issue that I have with the spider holster, and this is just me, it's a great product. But the problem with me is I tend to wear my shirts slightly long and untucked. So that means, my belt, like the shirt that I'm wearing right now, my belt is like 6 inches above the bottom of the shirt. So that means, you're walking along basically with your shirt bunched up. And then you've got this like pile of shirt that's between the spider holster and the camera. And then when you're in a hurry, you're trying to seat that little ball in the spider holder and the shirt gets in the way. So for me, that was my only irritation with the spider holster. But I do use the Peak Design, just the clip piece. As I mentioned, I put it on my sling strap. I love that setup for my purposes, but obviously that's only going to work with a smaller, lighter camera. Otherwise, it's going to be a very awkward piece of weight that's kind of tipping off the front of my body, right? All right, let's go back here from Mitch. So Mitch said, and this really wasn't the kind of answer I was looking for, but he gave me all the great reasons. So the answer has value. For him, it's his phone. Random thoughts and ideas pop into my head out of nowhere at the most inopportune times. Without my phone to text or email them to myself or record voice notes, I would forget most of them. And you know what? I'm all in on that. On my phone, I am constantly doing screen captures if I'm surfing or I see something on Facebook. I am typing notes. I use Apple Notes like they're going out of style. So I did ask Mitch, so like what phone, what model? And he uses an Alcatel 3X. He doesn't do flashy phones. This one has good battery life. So good for you, Mitch. I don't know about the rest of you. I am an Apple guy. I'm an iPhone guy when it comes to phones. I haven't upgraded in a bunch of years. I am very much looking forward to doing the upgrade this year to the iPhone 13. There's some cool features that I'm looking forward to having. So let's see here from Pierre. He was going to say his Mamiya film camera, but I wouldn't let them use cameras as the option. So then he'd say 3 lenses. The Helios 44 2 lens, a 24-70 f2.8 Sigma, and let's see, the Nikon 105 f 2.8 macro. From Ajax, Tether Tools Cable. So here's another tethering person. The ability to shoot tethered makes my life so much better and easier, right? I'm with you on that one. Simon, my pop-up tent, so models can change on location in complete privacy. Yeah, those things are great, Simon. If you're talking about the little ones that fold up like a collapsible reflector, and then you pop them up, and it's like just enough for the model to get inside and to be able to change. Yes, I used to have one, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what happened to it. I have a feeling it was at some photography event and it got absconded. And when the event was over, I was probably yapping while I was packing up and didn't realize for a couple months that I did not have it. So I haven't had a name for them in a while, so that's okay. But yes, they are great. So let's see here. Brian Peterson, my camera bag he's got the S in parentheses there. For me, it would be camera bag with the brackets and probably about 20 S's. I tell you guys, and I mean it, it's not about the gear, but you never heard me say it's not about the bags. I have a bag problem. Like, I just do. I have a bag problem. I have way too many bags. But for Brian, he likes the Low Pro Stealth Reporter, the D300AW, and the Low Pro Flipside Trek BP450AW. Cool. I have two scenarios that are really, really important to me for bags. Number one, currently, my go-to bags are Think Tank. I've got like 6 Think Tank bags. I love them in terms of being able to travel, fly with them, how much I can pack in them, etc. Easy to organize. They're not cheap, but they're also not grossly overpriced. Aside from the Think Tank bags, back in my newspaper days, and actually for most of my career, so I've only been using Think Tank bags for probably about 5 years now, and they are indeed my go-to bag. I have all of my Stella Pro, my LED lights. They are in a Think Tank bag, so I can wear it as a backpack if I'm out on location. I love Think Tank. But my go-to bag for most of my career was a Domke bag. And if you don't know what a Domke bag is here, let me just show you. It is a canvas camera bag that was designed by Jim Domke. But why are we not able? They're using like an ad tag, and Firefox will not let me get to it. So let's do this here. The original Domke bag was made back in the 1970s. And this is essentially what it looks like. Nothing special to look at. They were just super, super easy. You could fit 2 bodies, 1 at each end, 4 lenses in the middle. You put your flash and your film in the outside pockets, a couple other accessories. Up in the lid, you would put your reporter's notepads so that you had a pen and a notepad handy to be able to get people's names. And it basically, when you wore it over your shoulder, it would just kind of wrap around your hip and you just flip the lid up, grab what you want. Greatest bag ever made. They were all canvas. And I just absolutely love them. I still have 3 of them at this point. I don't have the brown ones. The ones I have now are all black. Back in the day when they first came out, you could only get the brown ones, but now they're available in several different materials, etc. So let's see, Joe, your eyes, yeah, okay, but that's not really what we're talking about here. So an AD600, it's convenient and easy to use. For the life of me, I'm not gonna lie, I don't see how an AD600 is convenient, but if it's working for you, awesome, that's cool. Joel, a tripod and ND filter. I'd love to know what kind of tripod and ND filter. Let's see, German 24 to 70, 2.8 or equivalent should always be with me when I'm not sure about what kind of job I'll do. It's like just in case a lifesaver. Let's see, Jay Gaddy, 40 to 150 Pro. That's the Olympus lens on his camera 95% of the time. My mind, Adam, no offense, man. I'm glad that your mind is a good piece of gear, but maybe if you actually read the question, your mind would have told you that that answer is completely worthless to this conversation. Just saying, okay? Lynn, piece of gear I can't live with. The first thing that came to mind was the Manfrotto 680B monopod. Yeah, it's cool. I'm hearing a lot of wedding photographers lately talk about monopods. for years, I lived with monopods. In my newspaper days, I lived with monopods. In the brief couple of years that I did weddings, I used monopods a lot. And you never hear wedding photographers talking about monopods, but monopods are great. And then also Lynn likes the Hoodman Loop, which indeed is awesome for if you're working with DSLRs and you need to chimp off the LCD screen. Is great for being able to see the LCD screen. For me, my eyes are really sensitive to bright sunlight. So I find that, having that Hoodman loop, definitely a lifesaver. So let's see, I got one more here. All right. So I got a couple other people weighing in, but unfortunately, they're not giving me all the question or the information that I asked for. But let's go to the chat. We got a bunch in the chat. And by the way, gang, I think I'll have some time for a few Q&As tonight. I got just a couple little pieces of news to give you, but we'll get through this first. So let's see here. What else do we have in here? We got that. And Dieter, here, I have to mention this anyway. Just, it's actually not our topic tonight. Sorry, my bad. I was missing my window to put the comments in for you guys. And now that I'm in the comments, I have to put this up and say thank you, Dieter. There he is. He was watching Thomas Heaton landscape photography, but decided to come here and watch me live. So Dieter, I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see here. Scrolling on down for Cosmo, 50mm lens does it all at weddings. Wow, that's really interesting. So I'm not saying that's bad at all, but I don't know that I know any wedding photographers at this point that are, I don't want to say gutsy enough, but are kind of stylized enough actually that they just work with one lens for a wedding. So good for you if that's working out. And I love hearing that. And then Dwayne also said 50mm lens is the one piece of kit that I really lean on. Okay. And let's see, Claudio, I went initially for a Manfrotto Elements, which I grew out of because it was too unstable in windy conditions. And then he went for a Benro Mach 3 carbon tripod. And the series was it K20X. Cool. Very good. And I've actually, Benro, I use their tripods. I love their tripods. I'm not sponsored from them or by them. I've paid for, everyone that I've used, but I do like their tripods a lot. So, and let's see here. Who else do we have? And scroll on. Oh, David Johnson. I think it was the hold fast sling that you were thinking of. That sounds really familiar. So yes, David, you are probably completely right that it was hold fast. And again, I want to be clear. I don't know those folks, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm trashing them. I came really, really close to pulling the trigger on one of theirs. Really liked it. As I mentioned, for their harnesses, the two shoulder ones, they're wide, and I wanted a thinner one, and they were pricey. Honestly, they were pricey. So Harry's got a reminder for me to find that double leather harness. I will. So I'll grab that. And here's the winner, Reinhold. The one gear that I can't live without, the one lens that I buy next. There you go. That's it. And actually, there was another. I missed somebody's comment in here. Let me just refresh this on my page because there was one that caught my eye right before I came on, and I just realized I haven't read it. So, and it's from someone that I know. And where did he put it? Gosh, I hope he didn't delete it. The comment was from Jason Page. Oh, here it is. Jason Page from his one piece of gear he can't live without is the light painting brushes universal connector. It allows him to swap out of tools quickly and easily during exposure, and it allows him to create endless custom tools that easily attach to a flashlight. And full disclosure, Jason is the creator of the light painting brushes universal connector, but I completely concur. I completely agree. If you guys are into light painting and you haven't checked out the light painting stuff, so I interviewed Jason a couple of weeks back on TalkChat. So here, let me get you a couple links here. So let me just I'll show you what it is we're talking about when we say universal connector. So the website to find all these gadgets for light painting from Jason is lightpaintingbrushes.com. And the gadget that he mentioned is this universal connector that you see right here. This is the tool that allows you to attach all the different light mods to a flashlight. Super quick, super easy. It's a really stiff rubber with threads, and it's absolutely awesome. And then if you're into light painting, you want to learn a little bit about light painting, if you didn't listen to the podcast where I interviewed Jason, you should definitely check it out. Let me get the link for you guys. I will put it in the chat. And let's see. There we go. So there's the link for my interview with Jason. So you can definitely check that out. Okay. And let's see. Darren's got one here. Looks like this will be our last piece of gear, and then we'll do a couple questions. Photocross 13 backpack from Mindshift, which Mindshift is also a division or a partner with Think Tank. He shoots primarily outdoors. When he's on mountain bikes, the pack can carry his G9 with 2 to 3 lenses, batteries, H2O water bottle, food, keeps the gear safe when the trails get gnarly. Very good. Cool. Awesome, gang. And David also added here his tech bag that contains lotions and oils, Leatherman, portable battery bank, hair ties, clips, Visine, Bluetooth speaker. So, geez, David, I should have stopped sooner. You got to where I was going to go. So the game changer gear for me is the gear that I started carrying way too late in my career. Early in my career, I was and I was a newspaper photographer, so remember that. But I was one of those photographers who rather stupidly, not stupidly, but shall we say foolishly, I kind of carried like everything, like including the kitchen sink, which as a newspaper shooter, that makes things a little bit crazy in the sense that, a lot of times you have to, you got to move quick, you got to hustle, etc. You got to run, you got to climb, you got to do all kind of stuff. And the more gear you have, the harder it makes. And I could get away with it because I was really young. I started in newspaper work in my teens and then in my early 20s. So, I had the stamina and the strength and everything else. As I got older and I did weddings and all kind of stuff, I still tended to be the pack everything, including the kitchen sink guy. But of course, it started to get old. Fast forward, I was doing modeling portfolios, which meant that I was shooting both in the studio and on location. And that's where I started to really get to the point that, number one, I didn't want to carry all the heavy stuff, which is what, eventually led me to Olympus. But also, number two, I started to realize when I was out on location shooting that the gear and packing the gear was kind of the easy part. And even packing lighting and lighting accessories and stands, that was kind of the easy part. What was really important for me was packing the little things that would wind up helping me with the shot. So since I would be shooting models, it would be, packing hair ties, clips, pins, tape, tissues to be able to dab skin to get rid of shine, some simple makeup things or hairspray. Little tip, if you've never heard me talk about it before, if you're out on location and you need a hairspray a model's hair, don't use salon quality hairspray. You will make your job 1,000 times more difficult. Go to a Rite Aid or, Walgreens or CVS or wherever you are in the world. Look on the bottom shelf in the hairspray section, and you want to get a large can of Aquanet. Super, super cheap. It's junk hairspray. So now, why would I tell you to use junk hairspray? That's exactly why, because it's junk. You can spray a lot of it. It's only going to hold for 10 or 15 minutes, and it brushes right out. And unlike the salon quality hairspray, you can put a ton of Aquanet into a model's hair, and it doesn't change the texture of the hair. Salon quality hairspray, the more you put in, the more it starts to change the actual texture. So if you're shooting full-length pictures, you're shooting at a distance, that's okay. You're not going to be able to tell. But if you zoom in for that close-up, or if you come in for that close-up shot and the detail in the hair is visible, the hair is going to look really wonky, right? So all those kinds of things. And I apologize if I say the name wrong. I probably am, but Svetomir saying aside his camera, he's got safety pins, thin rope, plastic bands, extensions to fix flashlights to different objects and trees. Indeed. It's those things that for me are the game changers. When I started packing little bits of all of those things so that I never found myself in a situation where it's like, I wish I had this, right? The more you shoot, the more you develop your style. The gear part becomes really, really easy. You've already got the gear. You've got your go-to pieces. So they're going to be in your bag already, or you're going to put them in your case. That's fine. But it's those little extra pieces, the kind of, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong pieces. Those are the things that really help out and really will make a difference. So, for me, obviously, my go-to lenses, the 42 millimeter f1.2 Pro from Olympus for my portrait and my modeling work. My 75 millimeter f1.8 from Olympus is an occasional use. So for you full frame shooters, that's 90 millimeter and 150 millimeter. Those are the two focal lengths. I love the 7 to 14. I also love the little 12 to 45 that came out last year. Absolutely love that lens. Super small. That's kind of become a go-to lens. And also the 12 to 100 f4 is a great go-to lens. So those would be my lenses. My lighting stuff, I use Godak's 8200s and 8300s for strobe. I use the Light in Motion Stella Pros for all of my LED lighting, and I'm having a ton of fun with those, and I'll be sharing more about them as we go forward. And for those of you that are going to be coming to some of my presentations later this year in North Carolina or in Austin, Texas, you'll get to see me use the Stella lights because I'll be using those in the demos. And indeed, I have a Benro tripod. I use Benro monopods for my tripod heads. As you've seen in my YouTube videos, I use the Acrotech heads, the ball heads. They are amazing, handmade, precision milled. They are incredible. It's the kind of ball head you will buy one in your life, and you will never need to replace it, period. So they are great. Cooley Priestley. Do you not like the 8600? Cooley, the 8600 is a great flash. I use all the Godak's equipment. I don't own a 600. I have two 400s. I hardly ever use them. Literally hardly ever use them. I don't own a 600, and the reason is I don't need it. 9 out of 10 photographers that have that 600 don't need it. 9 out of 10 photographers that bought that 600 bought it so that they can go and do what they see on YouTube and take boring pictures like everybody else takes. In other words, overpower the sun. Cooley, that stuff is like circa 2016. Move on. Just move on. It's time to stop shooting f1.2 in broad daylight and using a flash with, a 32-inch collapsible, modifier and a grid. Like, how many more pictures do we have to see that are taken like that? Just saying. Kind of boring, right? So yeah, I mean, 600 watts is a ton of light. So are there photographers that actually have a use for that? Well, yeah, of course there are. But most people are buying that 8600. They just want to be able to overpower the sun. So, and by the way, if you do it right, you can do that with an 8200. So, but it requires a little bit more photographic effort as opposed to just being lazy and saying, yeah, I want to shoot here at noon. And I don't want to have to worry about which way the model's facing. Well, then, yeah, if, we're not going to do pre-planning and we're going to be lazy about it, then we need the 600 watt seconds, right? So, Cooley, I used to have photogenic 600s and here, he had just added here, photogenic 600s, and I had the photogenic 1250s. So it sounded like I just contradicted myself, right? No. The fact that I had the 1250s, that's exactly why I don't have Godox 600s. And that was easily a decade ago that I had those. And I didn't buy them because of what was on YouTube. So, I mean, I'll be completely honest. When I bought the 1250s, the photogenic DR 1250s, which were beasts, by the way, the reason that I bought them was this thought process. I wanted to buy a super powerful strobe that was going to cover me for anything that I would need to do. So I had like 4 of them. And here's the thing. In all the years that I had them, and it was probably about 6 years that I worked with them, I don't think I ever, honestly, sincerely, I don't think I ever did a shot at more than a quarter of a power with those strobes on location or in the studio. And of course, on location, I was running extension cords. Those were not power pack strobes, but it's just way more light than I just ever had a need for, period. And, we've also, fast forward, we are in a time period now where, digital technology, camera sensors are amazing. Photographers tend to get confused because of this crap on YouTube, these so-called tutorials. I mean, guys, look, any tutorial where you're listening to music the whole time, that is not a damn tutorial. It's just not. Come on, please. That's entertainment, right? It should be up on Netflix somewhere. But that's not a learning experience. Plus, when you're watching that, practically none of you finish the video and run out the door and try and do what you just saw in the video. You store it in the back of your mind, like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe I'll try that in a couple of weeks. And then that turns into a couple of months, and then you don't really try it. And then when you do try to try it, you don't remember exactly what was in the video because it's too far down the road. I'm just saying, right? So the thing with lighting today, we can raise the ISO and still have incredible quality. But, we've got all this push like you should. And I even say it too. I mean, ideally, you shoot at your base ISO for the highest quality. Yes. But the flip side of that statement is the fact that you could go ahead and shoot at ISO 200 or 400, and you are not going to see a noticeable difference in quality unless you're going to blow that frame up like 4,000% and do extreme pixel peeping. So you've got technology that's working to your benefit in different directions now. Whereas back in the film days, that was it. Once you start raising ISOs, that was a problem, period. There was really no way around it. With digital technology, that's not the case. So there's more than one way to solve the problem. There's always now more than one way to solve the problem. You don't have to have an uber powerful light, period, right? So question here from M, or comment, I've been thinking about an 8600 because when I use a large size softbox with my own 8200, I feel the light power is not enough unless I get the model so close from the softbox. So, and the challenge that I have here, okay, to give you more information, when you say, number one, large size softbox, number two, get the model close, the other variables that I don't know, what are we calling close? What ISO are we shooting at? And what aperture are you wanting to shoot at? Because every one of those things that I just mentioned would solve your problem if used in the right combination, right? Also, if you're using the 8200 in a large size softbox, I hope you are using the bare bulb, not the Fresnel head, the rectangular Fresnel head. Do not use a Fresnel head in a softbox if you have the option to use a bare bulb, right? If you don't have the option, you don't have the option. But understand that when you put a Fresnel head in a softbox, the likelihood of that flash covering the full panel is extremely small. So you want to make sure that you're using the bare bulb. So, Em, if you want to give me a little bit more information, I might be able to tell you, hey, there's another way to do this. You don't really need to go all the way to 600 watts, maybe doing a 300 watt. Because, folks, if you haven't looked at those Godox 8300s, 300 watt second strobes. So that's the same power as the Pulsey Buff strobes. That's the same power as the Interfit Honey Badgers. 300 watt seconds. They're tiny. They're like this big around and like this long. They're really tiny. So there's a lot of options that you can work light, work easy, and not have to spend the additional money, not to mention the size and the weight. Because those 8600s, folks, are beasts. Now, I realize some of you are like, Joe, they're not beasts. But in all fairness, you're probably the same photographers that are carrying around camera lenses that weigh 4 to 6 pounds. Why? Like, why? Why do you want to carry a camera that's that heavy? Just saying, right? So, yeah, again, there's lots of different ways that you can solve the problem. So, Robert, the one piece of gear I can't live without is Joe's YouTube photography channel. Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Let's see. Steve Wilking, you're going to be in North Carolina in 3 weeks. Awesome. Are you going to be at the Carolina Photo Expo? I can't believe it's 3 weeks. Steve, you just gave me a sense of panic because I still have a little prep work to do in that presentation. So that means I got to get my button gear, but I am looking forward to it very much. And if you've never been to the Carolina Photo Expo, in fact, here, let me put this up and share the link for you guys. For any of you that are able to get to the Carolina Photo Expo, it's going to be one of the first in-person events in, like a year and a half. Okay. Let me grab a browser here. So it is July 30th through August 2nd. There are some great speakers. Well, forget great, amazing speakers. Okay. So you got Kesha Lambert. This guy named Joe Edelman is going to be there. Lori Nordstrom, Chad and Beth Winstead, Mary Fisk Taylor, Jordan Chan, Peggy Rogerson, Linda Packard, Aurora DeLuca and Teresa Porter, and Michelle Salzman and Jerry DeLuca. The Saturday night of the event, Jordan and myself will be doing a shootout late in the evening, because we're both presenting on the Saturday. And what's cool about the shootout is they're basically open shooting bases I set up, and it's part instructional, part shooting opportunity, part fun, part social. I will tell you that the last time I was at Carolina Photo Expo, I did the shootout with Lindsay Adler. And still to this day, a couple of the images that I shot that night, I actually have in my portfolio and on my website. It's just a really, really fun event. But let me see if I can find the schedule just to give you a sense of what's going on. So it starts on the Friday. The stuff that's on Friday is kind of very much like PPA stuff. So you're fine if you miss the Friday stuff. On Saturday, this is when the real meat starts. It starts out with Jerry DeLuca, who's doing copyright for photographers. Lori Nordstrom, Plan, Play, Profit. Then me from 1 to 3:30. And there is a trade show. A lot of the manufacturers will be there. I know Tether Tools is going to be there. Stella Pro is going to be there. Savage Universal, they're going to be there. A lot of different manufacturers. And then there's dinner in the evening. Jordan Chan is doing his building a dynamic portrait, and 9 o'clock until the one that I did last time ended at about 2 in the morning. We do the shootouts. And so what'll happen is the photographers that are speakers, we will each have shooting bays, and we'll kind of set something up and we'll shoot it and talk through it, do a little demo people will watch. And then people that are attending have the opportunity to photograph what we have set up, photograph the models and that kind of stuff. So it's a fun time. And then on Sunday, more great stuff. There's a sunrise shoot on location. Kesha Lambert in the morning, trade show again in the afternoon, some business talks in the afternoon, and then you get into the evening. And then on Monday, there's a couple PPA things and a couple learning things. But I can tell you from my past experience, this will be I think the second, this is the third time I've spoken at Carolina Photo Expo, but it's like the fourth time that I've spoken for PPA in North Carolina. They are an awesome, awesome group. And then while I'm at it, let me grab one more link here. So here, we'll go ahead and we'll get some of Joe's news out of the way really quick. If you are down south, like Texas area, okay, at the end of August, if Joe can type, let me get this information here. The end of August, I'm going to be at Precision Camera in Austin, Texas. By the way, for those of you that maybe live in Austin, I am so jealous. This is like one of the coolest camera stores in the country. It is massively huge. And let me see classes or events here. Let's do the what's happening for events. And that's all July. That's the beginning of August. Where's the rest of it? For June and July. So they don't have the August events up here. They did have them. Let's try classes, see if I can find it this way. And so I want to get you the link. If not, the link is on my website. Yeah, it looks like they've kind of changed the way they have their setup here, but I will I will get you guys the link for Precision Camera. That's going to be August 20th and 21st that I will be down there. On the 20th, that's a Friday, I'll be doing a presentation that evening, which some of you may have seen the online version of it. It's called Understanding Creativity. The in-person version is a ton more fun, or funner, because the in-person version is interactive, meaning you actually participate in it and you will get to shoot. Okay. So here I found the links. So this is the Friday night event. And then on Saturday, the 21st, I will be doing an event called Bold and Beautiful Fashion Portraits. And here's the cool thing about this. So you guys, you guys know the work that I do, all of my fashion portraits and that. You will have an opportunity, if you are in attendance at this workshop, you will have an opportunity to create your own beauty and fashion portrait. I won't be shooting it. No other photographer will be shooting it. So I'll be doing an instructional demo, walking you through my process. I will have tons of props and bits of material, all the kind of stuff that you see me use. We're going to have a makeup artist there to do some crazy creative stuff, which, by the way, we will also have that in North Carolina. But once I have done the demo and kind of showed you how my process works, as an attendee at that workshop, you will have the opportunity to create your own beauty shot with me as your assistant / mentor. And you will be the only person that photographs that. So it'll be a lot of fun. I've done workshops similar to that before where, it's not like everybody shoots the same thing, because that's worthless. Everybody goes home with the same pictures, right? So it's a lot more fun to be able to do it that way. And coolly, are you planning on doing in-person classes in your studio like you did a few years back? Yes, but not until 2022. I mean, I'll be really honest, since it's in my home and since vaccinations are one thing, but we've got the variants coming and we still don't know exactly where this pandemic stuff's going. I'm just going to hold out until next year. And, we'll see. And I'll tell you guys honestly that even from an event standpoint, I'm feeling very fortunate. I've got a couple events that I'm doing live in person. I'm doing the July 31st event in North Carolina. I'm doing the Texas event in August, and WPPI in August, and Photo Plus in October. They're in person, but I'm also still getting booked for a lot of virtual or combination in-person and virtual events. I think we're going to see a lot more virtual events for a while. Just a hunch. I just think that's what's going to happen. People are still being a little bit cautious to see how everything goes. But yeah, coolly, I will definitely bring them back. I used to enjoy doing them. We have no more than 5 people attending those workshops. We have a makeup artist, we have a model. We do them over 2 days, so it's a full weekend. And yes, everybody gets to do a lot of creating and a lot of shooting, and we cover everything from really very basic portraiture all the way through the really crazy, creative makeup-based shots with material and fans, and we do all that kind of stuff. So, all right. So before I run out of time here, let's see. M had asked the question earlier. So let me go back to the original question, because he gave me the follow-up, or she gave me the follow-up. I've been thinking about the 8600 because when I use a large size softbox with my own 8200, I feel that the light power is not enough unless I get the model so close from the softbox. Okay. So the follow-up information, let's say, for example, f8, 1/125th, 100 ISO. 120 centimeter softbox for a full-length photo. The light coming from the 8200 will not be enough, even with full power, unless the subject is so near from the softbox. So first of all, I got to do a conversion here. 120 centimeters in inches is, let's see, 47 inches. So, all right, so that's a decent sized box. And then also added with a honeycomb on the softbox. Why do we have a honeycomb on the softbox? Like, if you can give me a reason as far as what that honeycomb is doing for you, I will solve your problem with the honeycomb. But understand that the honeycomb is actually cutting down on your light power a little bit. Okay. Just please let me know that you really know why you need the honeycomb. Okay. But let's go back to your settings. So f8, 1/125th at 100 ISO. So there's a couple things here. First of all, my first question would be, do you absolutely need to shoot at f8? Second question would be, why can't you raise your ISO? Third thing would be just to point out that shooting at 1/125th with a strobe kind of doesn't make sense. Most cameras today are going to synchronize with that flash at 2/50th or 200 shutter speed. So it's a good rule of thumb to shoot at the maximum speed that your camera will sync at, unless for some reason you are trying to include ambient light in the shot. So let's break this down for you, Em. Okay, let's use your settings. I'll work with your settings for a second. 1/125th. We're going to go ahead and mandatorily, I'm going to make it 1/250th because that doesn't change your exposure. So let's understand, folks, when I change the shutter speed, that's not changing the exposure at all. I could take a picture at 1/125th and I could take a picture at 1/250th on those settings, the f8, 100 ISO with the flash at the same power, they'll be the same brightness. Okay. So if we get an AD600, what you're picking up, Em, is 2 stops of light, right? So if you don't change the distance, if you don't change anything except the aperture, that means that you would go from shooting at f8 to f16, okay? So when you say the light's not enough at full power, what do you mean it's not enough? Like when you're shooting at f8, so I need one more answer from you, Em. When you're shooting at f8, are your pictures turning out dark? That's what I'm curious about, okay? So let me know if your pictures are coming out dark. But for the difference in money to buy 2 stops of light, you can do that with ISO. You can do that with, after just right there alone in your settings, you could go from f8 to f4. And you're going to have the same exposure. So if it's coming out dark at that setting, that just means you need to open up your aperture, right? So you got to give me a little bit more feedback here because there's a lot of different ways to solve this problem. And if you can't get it in quick enough before I have to sign off because I'm running overtime here, do me a favor, please come back next week and add that to the equation, and I will definitely try and get you a solution that's going to work for you without having to spend all that extra money. I mean, for me, that would be the big thing for me, is to try not to spend a ton of extra money. Okay. So, all right, gang, it's 7 o'clock, actually 7:03. I'm running late as usual. I want to thank all of you for checking in tonight. Remember, Friday, it'll be Friday night or Saturday morning. It's going to be one of the two because I wasn't planning on using this interview this week, but it's just too good to hang on to. I really want to share it. Interview with Tracie Maglosky. The title, it's all about newborns and maternity, but trust me, if you're hoping to make money as a photographer, portraits, weddings, engagements, senior portraits, newborns, maternity, any of those categories, do not miss this interview. It is a master class in making money as a professional photographer. Tracie is so transparent and she is great. She breaks this stuff down so simple. And I promise you, you're going to be listening to the things that she talks about and it's going to be like, why didn't I think of that? That's so obvious. She even hit me with a couple things that just stomped me dead in my tracks. Like, my God, for all these years, why have I never thought of that? That is so incredible. In fact, I'll tell you now, for those of you that have been having a hard time getting like Google reviews and testimonials from your clients, Tracie has a way of getting reviews from every single one of her clients. She doesn't pay them. She does sometimes bribe them with a free print. That's easy to do, and people have been doing that for a long time, right? But the way she does it is brilliant. Don't miss out. All right, Em came back really quick here. Let me just try and get this. Shooting the dresses for stores, and a lot of time in the middle is bright enough, and the bottom is a little bit dark. All right, Em. So there's a couple of ways that you can get around that. Number one is back your light up a little bit, right? So, and this is where the inverse square law comes in. So let's work with your 1/125th, which you're going to change to 250, right? But ISO 100 at f8. So if you back your light up twice as far from where it is, so let's say your light is only 3 feet from your model because you're afraid of being able to get it bright enough. So if you back that light up to 6 feet, now you have to shoot it at f5.6, but the light will spread twice as far, right? Twice as far. I think it's almost twice as far. You have to go do the calculation, but the point is, the further light travels, the more the light spreads, right? So I would encourage you, go check out my video on my channel about the inverse square law, and you'll see diagrams, working diagrams of how that happens. So shoot at 5.6. And if you still want to shoot at f8, you could back the light up twice the distance, raise your ISO to 200, and stay at f8. So again, you're going to solve that problem without spending any money. You're going to use the inverse square law, and you're going to understand the relationships between shutter speed, aperture, and you don't need to spend any money. If you want a little bit more light to work with, maybe get an AD300, but AD600 is a ton more light than what you need. And it sounds to me like you don't properly understand the inverse square law and the exposure relationships. So spending the money on an AD600 is not going to get you any closer to the solution because you still won't understand how to properly place that light and how to manipulate the exposures based on the relationships of those settings. So I would encourage you, do a little bit more research, check out my video on the inverse square law, and I dropped the link earlier. It's also down in the description of this video. Join my group on Facebook. You'll be able to ask me more questions, get more information there. Okay? All right, gang, I'm way over time. So have a great week. In most places, the weather's getting pretty decent. I mean, it's really hot in places, but you know, you're getting vaccinated, or at least people aren't getting as sick. We can get out. So it's time, gang. Let's get back to using those cameras. Get away from watching all these, you know, music videos of photographers taking pictures, the same pictures over and over again. Go take your own. Create something that's unique. And most of all, have fun. Worry less about the gear. Find the pieces of gear that are going to solve your problems and let you enjoy your photography. But go have fun, because as always, you know the drill. Your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Have a great week. Stay safe.